Chapter 6. The Biggest Stick. It'll be all right, Sophie. Darius wouldn't permit anything less. His creation of their predicament was the most proprietary information he'd ever possessed. Mating birds called out, and he ground his teeth. You'll see. What he saw in himself was a lack of foresight. Gee, where have I heard that before? When he'd told Sophie that they'd conceive again, they'd lost one child, their only one, via ectopic pregnancy. No need to canvass that history. Her stiff lips communicated recollection without a sound. Their most exquisite joy had grown inside her, inside them both, it seemed, utterly innocent. And yet their baby destroyed half of Sophie, organs and spirit, before he or she whisked away. The bond between husband and wife siphoned like sand. Trust me, please. He needed that so badly it hurt. You've said that too, far too many times, but it's okay. She licked her teeth and captured strands of wayward hair in a repeated motion he recognized as self-soothing. We'll get through this easy peasy. I will. I'm here to help. She smirked. Are you? Always. No truer words were ever spoken. She had to know it, even without the surety he attempted to convey with looks alone. He knew better than to touch even the edge of her sweater. They may not reconcile today, but better memories would go far to repairing them both, even if they only remained friends. A state he wasn't certain he could live with. I'll never stop caring, he choked out. I could say something. Say whatever it is. We're alone here, without accommodations. Love is a drug, Darius. Like I said, better to move on. But stranded, sticky, and... She tugged her hat. That's a virus. Something to endure until it passes, no matter what we care about. Or who. So I'm a sickness? She couldn't mean that. You're you. Her simple statement, followed up by a shrug, drilled him better than the mosquitoes that typically preferred Sophie. What is that supposed to mean? That she had repellent for blood? A lover? Another bird cleared its lungs, and they both startled. Shut up, you, he growled at the canopy overhead, and turned on his wife. Now please, explain yourself. Maybe he'd mistaken her leaving him for frustration over their inability to have children. He peered into those unblinking eyes and... no. He shook his head, more in his mind than anything, but Sophie still challenged him with an upturned chin. Morgan was not her type, an out and proud womanizer. Yet Sophie was far from frigid. Sophie was quick, creative, and passionate, in the office and out. Everything he'd ever hoped for. One reason he'd waited to marry until he found the woman, or she found him. Sophie had answered his ad for interns. What is it? She'd always loved pegging him with questions instead of answering. You can't call me a disease and then say nothing, could she? Let's leave it there if we hope to maintain this truce, she spoke serenely enough, but calm was often her way of masking the opposite. That made two of them, since Darius learned long ago that giving way to anger only stripped him of control, of himself or the situation. I'm heading deeper in the jungle. There has to be something around here. Another bird screeched and she shouted, Are they going to go at it all night? Darius let her entree go. Sexual innuendo and talk of mating birds was not what she needed. Not with unshed tears transforming her eyes into gleaming pools. Blue enough to shame the ocean. They'd just left, and him too. And here he'd nearly convinced himself she might have taken a lover. Don't go too far, he cautioned. How could I? We don't have a machete unless you brought the one I'm still convinced you'd prefer in my back, or my fund. She didn't trust him, and so be it. Call if you need me. I won't. Putting distance between them, She shucked off her sweater and threw it toward the luggage she restacked neatly. Food, water, and a semblance of shelter are what they required. He'd gut the bungalow and make the best for both of them. If Morgan's detour went as planned, Darius would have a full 24 hours to transform his wife from disinterested to desirous. Of whatever he could provide, adequate shelter was a start. "There may be a nearby stream or something," she called. "Hear that?" "Yes," he said, even though his hearing was limited to the thunder of wind through the trees overhead. "Water must be close. Fresh, or else this hut wouldn't make sense." "Sense has nothing to do with today." He turned her a look. "It'll be over soon, like a 24-hour flu." She stalked into the brush before he could get a read on what appeared to be a playful expression. Her silhouette slipped in and out of glossy foliage, and Darius turned to task. Fallen palms, a filthy cot, an upturned table, and dirt met him on the inside of the hut. Hot, sticky, and far from romantic. Okay. He had the skills to turn the situation around. Fishing, frying his catch on an open flame, skills his wife knew little about. Too much talk of Mathraki saw her tune out. She wouldn't tonight, only if out of necessity. He'd fix a meal beyond her imagining, and they'd have to drown out the squawking somehow. Talking was only one suggestion that crossed his mind. The prelude to other things, he hoped, clutching up a load of palms. Things she still may entertain despite his being. A squeal, not a squawk, cut through the humidity. "Sophie?" He swapped palms for the biggest stick he could find and dashed outside. "Sophie, I'm coming." Great. We have company. Sophie thanked God instead of cursing like she typically did when something or someone interrupted quiet time with Darius. Hairy legs spread, ready to rumble, and waving a stick, he looked hilarious. The sadness tugging at her evaporated. She really should try to be civil and have mercy on him. "What? Where?" he demanded. "Are you all right?" She took in the visual of her big, brave protector, then stabbed a finger toward fire-red pom-pom flowers. Tangerine, really, surrounded by deep jungle green. "Over there. Your bird pals apparently called for backup to take up ground assault." "I see nothing." Because he needed glasses but refused them. "Look closer." She took his hand, flapped her free one until he lowered his stick, and walked him toward the bushes like the guide he needed. "See? Those chunky green guys over there. They startled me, but they're harmless. Scaly, spiny, and likely more frightened than they were, a clutch of iguanas winked up at them. Just under that bough. Darius jumped, and so did she, thanks to him. "Harmless?" he breathed. "Okay, he saw them now. Yes. You're perfectly safe, Dari." The nickname slipped out, and with it, the mental image of Mrs. Santa in the game store. Sophie tugged his arm, attempting to ignore the firm feel of it while putting matters in perspective. "What are you doing?" "Showing you it really is all right. Enough was enough. Those are deadly. One drop of saliva, one scratch, and we're..." He spun around and roped her in his arms. Strong and warm and... Darius shifted to stand in front of her, his back to her front. He hooked an arm behind her, splayed fingers snugging her close like an iron band in reverse. They weren't spooning, exactly, but close enough. He craned his head around, and her hat tipped off. The scent of him, bergamot, patchouli, and a dash of rose, filled her head. An undernote of pure male, potent and potentially dangerous, forced a shudder she hadn't felt in months. Years. Merry Christmas.